Welcome to another day in the Matrix. This is Red Pill Podcast 244. And I just want to start this off with gratitude. These past couple of months, and especially past couple of weeks, have been a soap opera here in crypto land. But our wolf pack over here in our mastermind community has been such a breath of fresh air. Seriously, it's incredible. You are all legends. And while I've been observing what's been going on in this crypto space over the past couple months, I've watched essentially a repeat of April earlier this year. But this time around, the division is even worse. While over here, I've actually witnessed stronger communication, more teamwork, and undoubtedly more resilience. So I'll say it again, you are all legends, and I'm grateful to have connected with you all in this lifetime. And probably we've all been connected for several lifetimes before, so gotta love how the simulation works. Now, as you can imagine, we have a lot to cover in today's podcast as we are saying goodbye to this month of November, and we're immediately following that up with welcome to another December in the Matrix. Can you believe 2025 is almost over? It's absolutely wild how quick this year went. Mamma mia. So this means for today's Red Pill, we're going to focus on the upcoming monthly close as we usually do, and the setup into our final month of the year, which based on the last time I checked in on the yearly candles, this year of 2025 might be the weirdest year in Bitcoin's chart history. And that might be very good news, actually, considering there's a lot of weird things happening in this cycle. A lot of patterns have been breaking. And based on my experience as a professional decoder, it's typically that when several popular patterns break, a paradigm shift occurs. And we might literally be teetering on the edge of that paradigm shift as we speak. And I believe the next couple of months ahead will prove this. So now that we've set the tone for today's Red Pill, I actually quickly wanted to remind you that my biggest sale of the year has been extended through the weekend into Cyber Monday. This gives you one more chance to take advantage of this sale while it's still live, and to access this private link, you can head over the description or in the pinned comment below this video, and you'll find the link that takes you to this private Patreon member version of the sale page. It gives you an even bigger discount than the one that is being shared with the public right now. So definitely make sure to check that out, since it's the biggest discount I've ever offered during Black Friday, Cyber Monday. And this way you can lock in the best price available, since all of my masterminds are a one-time payment for lifetime access. So you can't beat this value that's available right now, especially for the package deals, which are currently up to 35% off right now. And I'm grateful for all of your support. It truly means the world to me, and I want you to know I poured my heart and soul into these courses, and I'm sure anyone who invests in them can feel that. Now, let's get into today's Red Pill. As always, make sure to get relaxed, get comfortable, grab yourself a cup of coffee or tea if it's a little earlier in the day, or a glass of wine or beer, or any beverage of your choice if it's getting a little later out there in the Matrix. And also make sure to comment below this post here on Patreon to vote on the altcoins that you'd like me to cover in next week's Red Pill. But before you leave a comment, please just make sure that you use the search function here on Patreon to check that I have not covered the project in at least 3 months. So in the event that it's been over 3 months since I've reviewed that altcoin, or if I've never covered that altcoin before, as long as it has at least 1 year of chart history here on TradingView, you can then go ahead and comment below with the name of that altcoin and include the ticker symbol next to it as well. And whatever submissions get the most likes, those top 4 will be selected for next week's Red Pill. Now, as of today, it is Sunday, November 30th. Both Saturn and Mercury retrogrades are complete, as we've made it through the day, leaving 33 days left in the year. This past Friday, November 28th, and yesterday, which was the 333rd day of the year. And this comes back to last week's Red Pill Decode, where we were talking a lot about the master number 33, the master number of transmutation. And remember, we have the next total lunar eclipse is going to be on the 3rd of March in 2026. So there's your Gregorian 33 date, 33 code. And that also happens to be the day leaving 303 days left in the year. Again, you remove the 0 using the rules of numerology, and you have the 33 code again. And from today, November 29th and November 30th, moving into March 3rd, the 3333 date, they are 3 months and 3 days apart. Another 33 code. And now that we've wrapped up this 48th week of the year, and we're moving into the 49th week of the year, just consider that 49 is 7 squared. So we have 7 sevens. And for those that are brand new to my work, we actually talked a lot about this over the past couple of years because of something called the Jubilee. And we're actually going to talk a little bit about that in a moment, but we're no longer in the biblical Jubilee. That was back in 2023. But we have a specific Jubilee that affects us here in crypto, and it's tied to Bitcoin and its creator, Satoshi. We'll cover that in a moment. But tomorrow, kicking off the 49th week of the year on December 1st, we're going to go to that date. It will actually be tied to the upcoming year of the horse. We have Chinese New Year leading into the 17th of February. It's the official day. But we have the last day of the year of the snake on the 16th, and we are 77 days from that day. Remember, 7 times 7 is 49. December 1st starts the 49th week of this year. You guys remember how the 49ers were playing the Super Bowl quite a bit over the past 5 years? Going back to C19, they actually lost in that timing for the C19 ritual. We talked a lot about this leading up to the last selection between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, and we saw how that went down. So anyways, there's so much going on in the world stage when it comes to these major sporting events, things like the Olympics, Super Bowl for sure, also major events like what we have with elections. So that end of last year was very special. Very, very special. And that means all the events that were happening earlier in that year regarding major sporting events were giving you code that we could utilize. So whether you're into sports or not, doesn't matter. It gives you really powerful information to consider. And well, my last 4 years of decoding here for Waters Above has proven this. So there are some pretty crazy 49ers decodes and decodes with that number 49 leading into the last selection, and put a lot of emphasis on those to determine that Trump would win that presidency against what a lot of people started to assume, even the people who keep up with The Simpsons, where they were showing that connection to Lisa Simpson and how in that one Simpsons episode she wore a purple suit. And that's the same kind of color scheme that we saw with Kamala Harris. Anyways, I don't want to go too deep down that rabbit hole. Let's get back to this. Regarding tomorrow, exoterically, we have this being the date that the Fed will end QT, quantitative tightening. You probably heard a lot about this already, so I don't want to bore you. Again, you're all here for the esoteric take on the markets, and you can get that all that Fed stuff from all the other channels. But here, we want to focus on the hidden code that runs these markets. And I know for a fact the Fed sets up these FOMC meetings in advance to be coordinated with the astrology, numerology, and gematria. Anyway, speaking of the upcoming Fed meeting, we have on December 9th into December 10th, as many of you are aware, we have Fed Chair Powell spellcasting the markets in the next FOMC on December 10th. And I just want to quickly take a moment to break this date down esoterically. It might not be something that connects with all of you and resonates immediately, but this is something that I feel could be helpful for you all as decoders or trying to become more understanding of the numbers that run this simulation. So we're going to go to this date of the 10th of December, coming up in about 9 to 10 days, depending on where you live. We have the year reduced, well, not reduced necessarily, but when we talk about this year, we call it 25. So we have the 2-5 code. Say that out. 25 is 2 5s. 5 plus 5 becomes 10. Then you have the 10th day. Obvious, it's a 10. And then you have the month December. Not as obvious, but look at the word December. It starts with the prefix in Latin, deci. Deci means 10. So you have 10, 10, 10. And 10 becomes 1 in the rules of numerology. You remove the 0. You have this 111 code is hidden within all of this. The code that's symbolic of an energetic reset rather than like a physical reset or physical restart. So I'll say this really slowly so you won't understand what I mean. I also talked about this a little bit last week with regards to the 222 or the 333. Well, 111 is symbolic of an energetic reset rather than a more physical reset or restart, like you'd have with the master number 11, for example. So 11 would be, in my opinion, more of a physical thing. 11, 22, 33 are always going to be tied back to something more physical. This is why this Christ character dies at 33 years old, and it's symbolic of the body tethered to God. So God is the spiritual, etheric thing, whilst Christ is the body, the character that has to go through this physical experience and then is brought to its end on the 33rd year through the crucifixion ritual, this ritualistic event that is one of the most popular ritualistic murders ever, right? We all know about it, whether you practice the religion or don't. Then what happens is this individual resurrects 3 days later. 333. Your 333 code now makes it more of a spiritual, a more etheric thing, a more energetic thing rather than a physical thing. I hope this is all making sense. So, anyways, there's some deep teachings there in the numerology, and I hope it provides you guys with value. Now, let's keep in mind, especially with this date of December 10th, it's actually tied to Rosh Hashanah, the Hebrew New Year, which was technically the 23rd of September this year. And it's going to be connected by 79 days. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because 79 is symbolic of gold. We have the 79th element on the periodic table, Aurum. It is gold. You could see the sun logo over there as well when I hover right now. So I just want you to keep that in mind. 79th element is tied to, the number 79 is the 22nd prime number. We also talked about this 79 number quite a bit, like 2 years ago, because of this connection to Ukraine. You could see Ukraine has the 79, it has the 22. Again, I just told you 79 is the 22nd prime number. You know, it's so funny. A lot of people back then, when Ukraine was the talk of the town, they would always be like, Waters, it's sketchy how your logo is the same colors of the flag of Ukraine. And I'm like, go look at when I created my Waters Above logo, as in 2020. Nobody gave a shit about Ukraine until 2022. And that's sad. Maybe there's Ukrainians that are here with us. I'm clearly not speaking to you or the people that are going through whatever they're going through, but I'm just saying that it's funny how conspiracy people always want to find a new conspiracy to like slobber all over. So yeah, super funny. But yeah, I explained a long time ago where my symbolism comes from with my logo. First of all, it's symbolic of the waters above, and the waters above separated from the waters below, which is tied to the cerebral spinal fluid. So it's this liquid consciousness. And the blue orb or the blue sphere is symbolic of the throat chakra, which is what you get with my work. So anyways, it was a very intentional design. I love my branding and my logo. And when the Ukraine situation happened, it was like, Mamma Mia. It takes away all the beauty and all the meaning and the symbolism that was tied to this custom art that I created. But anyways, the 7922 connection here, we talked about quite a bit, especially during the time of that Russian-Ukraine invasion situation. And then you could see the 47 there. And I'm hearing a lot of talk that this whole quote-unquote Russia-Ukraine situation might be coming to an end very soon. Will that be a catalyst? Well, who do you think is going to be tied to that the most? the guy that's tied to the number 47, Donald Trump. So this is all about that Trump playing the savior character of the next 4 years, even though there's quote unquote sacrifices along the way. One of them being what we're seeing right now with the markets, with inflation, tariffs, etc. So there's always a financial arm to all of this. I hope you guys appreciate this like momentary stream of consciousness we're going through. None of this was scripted. So since I brought up the man and the number 47, how old is he this year? He's 79 years old. So Trump turned 79 this year. And then we've had a historic breakout in the gold price this year. And now gold is currently looking incredibly bullish. One second, actually, before I go any deeper into that, this is exactly why I bought gold. The last big gold purchase I made was right after the end of the last Jubilee. It was because I studied this esoteric concept of the Shemitah years and how 7 cycles of 7 Shemitah year leads to Jubilee. And what's wild is once Rosh Hashanah of that year was over, we had the October 7th event in Israel. That's not a coincidence, guys. That's a false flag staged event, 100% tied to the ending of Jubilee. Even we had the year prior, I believe the same year as the Russia-Ukraine situation, we had the Platinum Jubilee, the Queen's Jubilee. You guys probably remember that. So there's so much that's happened over the past 4.5 years of doing Waters Above. It's just so wild to think back to 2022, 2023. And this year, I feel like is going to probably be something that we continue to talk about for years to come. Just with how everything went down in the markets and on the world stage with these AI developments that we're seeing right now. Unbelievable. So we were talking about Trump turning 79, the gold breakout being incredibly bullish. Gold right now is also currently looking incredibly bullish when we're solely looking at the price. But during the recent relief rally, it's been seeming that way because of the price, but it's technically approaching a zone where it could turn into a bull trap, which leads to a dead cat bounce. I just quickly put on the gold chart to show you what I'm talking about. So we're kind of looking at this move right here where we've made it into this zone. And when you're in this zone, this is kind of the place where it's make or break. Is it a bull trap and will it lead to a dead cat bounce, which funny enough, many are expecting for Bitcoin. That's what most people are expecting right now for Bitcoin. Yet, I bet very few analysts are actually talking about this setup right now for gold. Instead, they're focusing so much on Bitcoin. And keep in mind, if gold were to get rejected at these levels that they're currently trading at, although it would probably initiate a notable pullback for Bitcoin at the same time, momentarily, overall, it will likely lead to a rotation. And this would align with the soon to be expected start of QE, of quantitative easing. And naturally, this would put us into a more risk on environment where Bitcoin and specifically more speculative altcoins get their time to shine. And of course, I'll continue to keep you all updated on my thoughts regarding gold as things progress. But for now, all eyes are on the Fed and liquidity. And that seems to be like what I'm calling the intellectual shift in this cycle compared to the last cycle, the one in 2020, 2021. Considering the last cycle, almost no one really spoke about the GLI, the Global Liquidity Index. Let me quickly show you what I'm talking about here. You know, now most analysts are talking about this. And of course, when it starts to become incredibly popular, is the exact moment we start to see Bitcoin deviating from projections. But funny enough, I did play around with this M2 Global Liquidity Index a bit, and I found that the number 74 regarding the offset, it was actually pretty accurate. So if we go over into the settings of this and offset it by 74 days, I'm getting some really good accuracy with how this lines up move to move to move on all the major pivots. And the reason I said funny enough is because we're right back at that key number of 47, and the mirror of the number 47 is obviously 74. But anyways, between 10 to 11 weeks seems to give us the quote most accurate offset for this indicator. That's what most people I've seen are teaching. Sometimes you see it a little more, a little less, but generally it's around that amount of time. And as you can see lately, we've been deviating from this projection there's a divergence going on. As far from the date of around like October 13th or so, we started to see a pivot up in M2 and to start pushing higher, with a new high setting in pretty much right around the time that we crashed into from November 19th to 21st. Perhaps this is a coincidence, but if you look back at the last time that we had a notable divergence, it was right here. That was the last time that we had a very notable divergence. After that, pretty much from the beginning of 2024 till quite recently, this has been on the money. It's been scary how on the money this has been. But we had a notable divergence like we're seeing now between this indicator and price at this same exact time of year from October into November 2023, leading up to the launch of the first official Bitcoin ETF, which happened right there in early 2024. And then, of course, we had a little bit of a bear trap followed by a new all-time high. Except back then, M2 was dropping and Bitcoin was pumping. Whilst this year, obviously, we have Bitcoin dumping and looking bearish while M2 is moving up. So it doesn't shock me that it wasn't until, and listen closely, it wasn't until after we had this divergence over here in late 2023 into early 2024, then taking almost another full year on top of that, for all of these analysts and crypto influencers to start focusing solely on this indicator as the main kind of metric for their investment thesis with their content. And then, as I said moments ago, then once it got popular, which I believe is perhaps due to the platform that Raoul Pal has, so credit to him, but essentially once this M2 GLI with a estimated offset time became the talk of the town, that's precisely when it, quote, stopped working. Now, please don't take this as me throwing any shade at Raoul Pal. All respect to him, even though I don't actually follow his work. I don't want to seem like I'm talking badly about him or anyone else who uses this indicator, because as I said a little earlier, for the most part, this entire year, it's been spot on. I'm simply just sharing what I've personally noticed in the charts when utilizing this indicator, and hopefully pointing out that divergence between price and M2 projection in late 2023. Hopefully pointing that out helps with regards to hopefully preventing all of you from leaning too hard on a single indicator when it comes to your own TA and your personal investment thesis. I'd say from personal experience, just use these things as a guide, but they are not law. So like anything that's made up of chaos due to a plethora of variables like the weather, or in this case, the markets, it's of course great to have tools and have guides, but what's even more important is the ability to remain flexible, especially during times of uncertainty in either direction. Whether the price looks incredibly bearish, like some might call our current environment, where there's noticeable fear in the crypto markets, we have that fear sentiment coupled with the price, or in the other direction when we return back to being incredibly bullish again. Regardless, remain flexible and stick to your investment thesis, which means in plain English, trade your plan. And another reason I'm bringing this up is because of stuff like this. Here we have a Wyckoff distribution. I'm getting so many people asking me my thoughts about Wyckoff. And I hope I don't sound like I'm trying to start things here, but like a lot of these analysts just dabble in Wyckoff and they are silent about it all the way until around this moment. And you can go type in Wyckoff method and find this chart for yourself. And effectively, it goes back. I know you can't see it right now. I can't show you, But right here is the start of 2024. This was the launch of the Bitcoin ETF that I was just pointing out before. This was the bear trap that followed, and this was the push into new all-time highs. And whomever this analyst was, they marked this as a buying climax. They marked this as an up thrust after distribution, a sign of weakness. They marked down here. This is September, guys. You know how fucking bad that was to make that call? What did Bitcoin do after October of 2024? Did we go to 30K? This is why I don't pay attention to anyone who dabbles, okay? If you hear people just talking about it for the first time, or it's like they're really waiting and waiting and waiting to just bring it up when everyone else is bringing it up. Guys, everyone was bringing up Wyckoff distribution in 2024. It's the same shit all over again. People who don't even study Richard Wyckoff. So I'm sorry, but like, I tune out the static, guys. Like, stay in your lane, learn from specialists. If you want to learn Elliott wave theory, study somebody who's an Elliott wave solely teacher, somebody who really, really studies it. If you want to learn Wyckoff, learn from somebody who really, really studies Wyckoff. Now, I'm not saying that it's impossible for us to be in a distribution right now. Many people believe we're in a distribution. Many people believe we're going to go straight into a bear market. Many people believe that we have a relief rally at best, and then we're going to keel over. And it will become kind of like the way this picture looks, where we've made it here, we're going to do something like that, and then we're going to drop down again. If that's what you think, that's fine. If that's what you think, then trade that plan, okay? I'm not trying to steer you away from that. But it's just really weird when I never see anyone talking about Wyckoff, and then once we get to an extreme in the market, sentiment-wise, now everyone is a Wyckoff specialist. It's like, God, man. You know, like, so this is kind of why I don't entertain that shit. When everyone was talking about M2, do you hear me talking about M2? When everyone's talking about Wyckoff, you hear me talking about Wyckoff? No, I'm talking about Wyckoff when no one else is talking about it. There was a very famous chart that I've been sharing all throughout this year. That was a Wyckoff chart, and I actually started sharing it around March, April, and people were clowning me, saying that the relief was impossible, the new all-time highs were impossible, and it all happened. And I basically didn't even take credit or talk about it. I was just like, whatever. So do the opposite of the herd. Everyone's scared shitless right now. So you make your decision from there. But when everyone started talking about this M2 thing, we see what it became. And that's the point of me taking this time today during this red pill to talk about these things, because this is going to happen again, guys. It's going to happen again and again and again. And I'm just teaching you, you got to kind of protect yourself from this stuff. And make sure that when you're going out of your way to learn from people, that they're not like cosplaying as somebody who dabbles in stuff, but they're cosplaying as a specialist or a professional, you know? You never hear me talking about Elliott wave theory. Why? Because it's not my thing. So I don't talk about it. There will be a day where I'll carve out some time to study it. And when that day comes, I will study it so much and I will keep quiet until I'm a specialist, and then I'll share my thoughts with you guys. That's the way I roll. The same thing with WD, GAN, and all the others. What I believe is the truth, though, and what would help you all the most, and then we'll continue today's podcast, is you don't need all of these different tools to accomplish the goal. You only really need to become excellent in one style. This isn't the Olympics. Like, you only need to get good in one style. You don't need to have like 40 different sports you're good at to become great. Even in business, you don't really need to be good at so many. You need to be really good at a thing, and then figure out how to get support in all the other areas. Figure out how to leverage on other people for the things that you're weak in. But you really don't need to become the best at all things. I've met many people who are 10 times more successful than me, but they have like 2 brain cells to rub together. They're not even that smart, but they're incredibly fucking committed to what they excel in. And whenever they're weak somewhere else, they know how to get help there. They're not stubborn. And they definitely don't cosplay like they're specialists and know-it-alls. And that's why they become very successful. That's something that I've learned from them. So I try to act the same way when it comes to all these other modalities for analyzing markets. You don't need to know all of them. You just need to know one, dedicate to it, and that was the decision that I made with Wyckoff method, and here we are today. So anyways, with that being said, I don't want to take up too much more time with the decoding stuff today, as I've already decoded that FOMC meeting for you guys, either in the last week's Red Pill or over the past couple Red Pill podcasts. But just a quick recap of that before moving into the charts. Please just remember that the day of the FOMC meeting on December 10th, it will be landing within the 50th week of the year. And why that's important is because we're in the year of the snake, and the snake is 50 in the most basic gematria cipher, English ordinal. So we're getting 50 for that in this particular year. We just watched the 47th week of the year pretty much be a crypto market crash. So we know our important numbers. 50 is one of them. So we need to look out for that, especially because there will be that FOMC meeting during the 50th week of the year. And what's also making it significant for us here focused on crypto is that Satoshi Nakamoto turned 50 years old in this year, which is why in my Year of the Snake Decoded that I released at the very beginning of this year, I called the time frame of April 5th, 2025 until April 4th, 2026 next year, I called that Satoshi's Jubilee. Because the Jubilee year lands after 7 cycles of 7 years, or 49 years, then biblical Jubilee is practiced on the 50th year. So the 50 year is a Jubilee. Of course, now with the monarch and the people in the royal bloodlines, they consider Jubilees a little bit differently. They have like 60, 70, 80 year Jubilee, like they're breaking it up by decades, I believe. But if you're looking at it based on Catholic, they do 25 year and 50 year. In Judaism, it's 50. That's it. So I'm paying attention mostly to the Catholic Jubilee that's happening right now and the Jewish Jubilee that already has come and gone. These are very powerful things to be aware of because they were in order to each other. So like this is like a restructuring of the experience called reality. That's why we're getting all this AI stuff, guys. That's why they're doing what they're doing to the economy. Like, I hope you realize. So C19, what they did back in 2020, the year before that Shemitah year, they did that all based on a protocol. And that protocol wasn't just, what do we do in 2019 to do it in 2020 to do... It was a 50-year plan. It was a 100-year plan. They knew everything. They know everything that will come from here until 2150. You want to think they don't? Then you don't study these guys. While you think in 1, 2, 3-year time horizons, they're thinking in 100, 200, 300-year time horizons. So you have to realize like what animal you're working with here with regards to the people who run this realm. So we just had what I'm calling Satoshi's Jubilee, and this mythological archetype Satoshi Nakamoto allegedly being born on April 5th, 1975. That, of course, means this year on April 5th, which is already behind us, was the 50th year since that date, naturally. And looking back at things, it really feels like for the most part, Bitcoin had an incredibly unique year compared to the rest of the crypto market. And nobody could deny that now. We haven't had an alt season. Like, there's so much weird shit going on that we haven't seen before with Bitcoin in this current environment. So just think about that, guys. So there's something to this, and perhaps in my upcoming Year of the Horse Decoded, I'll dive deeper into my thoughts on how I see this quote-unquote Satoshi Jubilee wrapping up into early April 2026. That's especially important because it's the month after we have our final lunar eclipse of the lunar cycle. So we talked about this a little bit in my last YouTube video I just put out. Check it out if you're interested. It was released on about 2 or 3 days ago, and I was talking about this total lunar eclipse and how this is the last one we'll have all the way until New Year's of 2029. So it will be our longest solar cycle ever. That's powerful. That's very powerful knowledge to have. So I'll be sharing also my expectations for Satoshi's post-Jubilee year, which will be most of 2026. And I'm sure I'm sure I'll find a bunch of other gems connected to that. So definitely stay tuned for that new Year of the Horse decoded presentation, Year of the Fire Horse. And that'll be released here on Patreon for you guys, for our mastermind community, either in the last week of this upcoming January or in the very beginning of February. Of course, I will have it released no matter what before the Chinese Lunar New Year on February 16th. So I'll try to get it out a couple weeks before, maybe 3 weeks at best. I have a really big project that I'm releasing on New Year's, so I really have to, yeah, it's a lot of work, but I will for sure make sure that I get that out for you guys on time. So it's my most anticipated decode of the year, where I decode pretty much the entire year ahead, so you can kind of consider it a 2026 decode. And I'm really looking forward to carving out some time soon to start preparing that presentation for you all. But for now, let's head into the charts, since we reviewed the upcoming, since we need to review the upcoming monthly close later today, which also aligns with our weekly close, which might be happening during today's red pill. So we have those both happening at the same time. So there's some important macro candle closes coming in, and we'll definitely want to review those. Of course, starting with Bitcoin, then we'll head into Ethereum and XRP, and then we'll wrap up today's podcast with reviewing the altcoins that you guys voted on for this week. I'm going to head over into this chart right now because I just want to see, is CME open? Yes, it is. So I'm going to quickly go to the hourly chart. This is kind of fun to have to do with you guys while we are live. So no CME gaps. Great. I'm just going to go ahead and delete that because we don't need to burden ourselves. No CME gaps right now. We have CME open, a little bit of pressure, but what I like to see is ETH above 3,000. I would love to see that monthly close, of course, above 3,000. That monthly close, I suppose, is coming in the next 34 minutes or so. So we might be finished before that. But anywho, just wanted to recap something really quickly with you guys, which is those 3 scenarios that I said for the last red pill. Some people were confused here about what I meant. So let me just quickly show you what I meant. We had scenario number 1, which was, I'm going to simplify it for you all, 47 days of sideways between 80K and 100K. So just like that. And from 47 days measured from November 21st, which puts you into January 7th, the first week of January. So you guys could mark that off if you like, just so you understand the method to my madness. So it's this scenario number 1. Something like that, where we can just continue to chop up in this range. And that would actually be mimicking something like down here. We could even have another swipe to 80K or maybe slightly lower next month. Or something like this, where we did the same thing. Or something like this, where it's really kind of just boring and then there's a release. So this is probably the most accurate. Like if I had to show you kind of the idea behind where I got the idea for scenario number 1, it's this. This is like the textbook boredom phase kind of vibes. So something like that. Again, it doesn't need to be perfect. I'm just giving you a fractal so you could kind of get the idea. And then this would just be a bunch of downside chop with a double bottom. This would be downside chop with a double bottom. And then we've seen Bitcoin do this even at the end of the last cycle. So when we get into our first oversold area, we have this quick rally up, rejection, and a double bottom before another false recovery rejection. You have this double bottom over here too. This is what Bitcoin likes to do, but we do have some times where it's just really boring, really low volatility, and then we pop up. But again, I'm just going to simplify it. Scenario number 1 is 47 days of sideways between 80 to 100K, and then perhaps we break range then, or we break below range then. We'll reassess when that time comes. But for now, it's just giving you the idea of how the next however many, month or so, month and some change can go. Now we have scenario number 2, which is what I am preferring. It's what I think will kind of confuse the most people. And that would be a rally up into like around 105, 109. So something like that. And then when we get there, we have a pullback. But this pullback is a higher low. So we have our low, then we have our higher low. Then from here, everyone thinks that Bitcoin's going to play the dead cat bounce where it goes into a deeper bear market, but instead it doesn't. It recovers and actually goes higher than that price that I got rejected at. So the idea here is this style of recovery, because a lot of people would be wrong then. And that's what the market maker loves to do at these very polarizing moments. They want to make everybody think they know what's going to happen, but they don't. So the people who think that we're just going to go straight deeper into the 70K zone, they'll be wrong. The people who are expecting relief rally followed by a dead cat bounce, they will be wrong. They will feel right when we get a rejection here, but they will inevitably be wrong because of this support. Then they will be very wrong when we go up higher again, because the people who believed in them will lose faith over here. And by the way, like this is kind of what those types of people want. They want people to have faith in them. It's the whole like thing of what's it called? I don't even know the word, but like I can see this like kind of energy behind like the who's right and who's wrong. And nobody makes money in this world when that's your like vibe. So I hope this is all making sense, the idea behind scenario number 2. It's effectively just how many people could be wrong at the same time. You already had your low, everybody was in extreme fear, then you pop up, we start seeing a little bit of FOMO, all the shorts that were built down here get squeezed. Then a lot of people feel right over here, start panic selling, we do go down, but then all it's doing is liquidating all the people that went long in here. And then all the people again who had their trades still open, thinking we're going into the dead cat bounce, they will get liquidated again with a push higher. So that's scenario number 2, which are 2 distinctly different scenarios. One is just very boring, low volatility, and then directional pick, while one of them is very much about using the short term to do some extremes. Right now, we're just starting what looks like a recovery, but it's clearly nothing close to what a true relief rally would look like. Then we have scenario number 3, which is this. It's just a repeat of March, April, May. So we already had our deep correction. This is April. This is a repeat of April, and we've now started the recovery right now. And then we have a little bit of sideways chop, which we could be in the midst of right now. And then we get the release into a new all-time high, because that's what it did in May. That I'm not expecting right now. I'm not expecting that, but that would really mess a lot of people up psychologically, because then all the people who believed in scenario number 1 happening with a break, like a very boring relief rally, which is what happened over here, nothing special, just this kind of same vibe, is what scenario number 1 is for the most part. Scenario number 2 is you give people a lot of volatility to play around with. Again, kind of this idea of that will be very, very hard on the average person, because it will look like we're hitting all the extremes with the relief rally, with the dead cat bounce coming in, plus the fake out and push higher. That is more like what happened over here, not here. Okay? So you can see how these 2 scenarios are going to be expected by a lot of people. You have this over here is more like a bear flag, okay, where you have your flagpole, you have your bear flag, and then you break down and continue. That would actually be the more like easier way to explain everything. Scenario number one is a bear flag because the down bias would be more expected if Bitcoin can't get back above 100K. Then the move right here would be more like scenario number two, the one that I'm preferring, which kind of looks like that, as you can see here. And scenario number three is just the what no one expected in May. No one expected Bitcoin to hit a new fucking all-time high in a month after it did a correction down to 74K. That was brutal. That was wild, right? And then we saw ETH absolutely went crazy. Like ETH went crazy. It went all the way back to a new all-time high after getting that crazy sell-off. So just to quickly show you the ETH chart, that shit was wild. Like look at this correction on ETH, and then it went higher, dude. It almost 70% correction, and then it went higher. That's insane. So that would be, again, the idea here that scenario number three would be more that move. Like we already had a pretty devastating correction, but guys, this was also something that happened in the last cycle where we had this major correction during C19 for altcoins, major correction for the tariff crash. Then we had this recovery. We had this little chop right here. We had the recovery, a little chop right here. And then we rallied higher than where we were before the crash, rallied higher from where we were before the crash. And then we had this fucked up moment. That is what we could be in right now. And what that would look like is an inverse head and shoulders play for Ethereum, which could lead us into March, April. So I'm just saying you really want to like kind of keep these three scenarios in mind because they're just going to be playing with the trading ranges, but one's a very low volatility and very like catastrophic ending, which I'm at this time based on where we're at in the solar lunar cycle, it's very possible, you know, like I was showing everybody the relationship in the last two lunar cycles where we have almost 40 days on the money is where we bottomed in both. So you see that? Now if we go 40 days before March 2nd, it's right around the beginning or the end of January. So again, scenario number one could be something really messed up like that, and then everyone would think it's absolutely over, but it's not, because we have the shortest lunar cycle ever that we're working with. So again, I told you like this. It could be something like that. Literally. And anybody who studies the lunar cycle, solar cycle stuff, let me know what your thoughts are on this, because this is a very plausible outcome. We break below 80K. Everyone's expecting us to go straight to 60 or whatever, but Bitcoin doesn't do that because it's not going to do what everyone expects. It's just not. Everyone's expecting us actually to have a textbook bear market where Bitcoin made a top in October and it will make a bottom exactly 1 year later. That's what everyone is expecting right now. But I already showed everyone this in my last video that I put out, that if you, obviously back in the 2014, 2015 cycle, you had no clue about that 1 year bottom shit. So if you would have waited, look at how long this took. 631 days. And by the way, that was one of our longest lunar cycles. The upcoming solar cycle we have is our shortest, comparable to over here. So that's what I'm saying. Like if you look in November into December of 2018, it was really shitty. It's just strange for us to go straight from all-time highs and to immediately finalize a bear market that rapidly, you know? So that's what's making this a very tough call right now, and why it's best to just be like not engaged. Because if you get engaged right now, that's where a lot of these decisions that you're making could be emotionally charged, and they could be based off of what wouldn't be best for your personal investment thesis or your financial situation. So you need to do what is best for you. Again, if Bitcoin pops up to 105 and some of your favorite altcoins are doing really well in that relief rally, and you absolutely need the money and you can't sit through any more pain, then you have to do what's right for you. As for me, I'm not selling in this environment. I just can't right now. I don't see the point. I don't see the point. I'm starting to feel more and more like the cycle's just getting started because of how late into the lunar cycle we already are, and Bitcoin's fucking 90,000. Just crazy how resilient and how strong Bitcoin's been against everything. We just had the most extreme fear readouts that we've had ever in the history of Bitcoin. And it's 90K right now. Like, that resilience is unbelievable. And also, speaking of resilience, look at XRP. XRP looks amazing right now. I know a lot of people are like hating on it, but like in the grand scheme of things, like it's not looking so bad. It's really not. It's been holding support pretty much. So, anyways, let's look at Bitcoin. It's going to have a bad looking monthly close, of course, but let's just neutrally observe. Okay, so we would have Bitcoin's first monthly close below the 13 EMA. That's also what happened over here in January of 2022 when we started that bear market. And what we can see is it took like 2 months for Bitcoin to get back to the 8 simple moving average before getting a rejection there. And where does that level land? 105K. Where did I say scenario number two would be? Between 105 and 109K. So that actually still aligns with the thesis that we could come back up to those levels, most likely before any more downside ahead. So that would make sense because this structure is actually, it is at least similar in that way. When you think of the close below the 13 EMA, but holding on the 21 EMA on the monthly, which is what we're doing right now. And so far in this cycle, since on not considering the breakout in Q4 of 2023, this would be the first time that we're back testing the 21 moving average on the monthly since then, which was when all of these moving averages were actually going into a bullish posture in the first place. So that's a key thing to note. And then look at where the 55 moving average is. It's sitting right now all the way at 54K. And that's been an important level for like quote unquote bear markets or black swan events. So we could see that it was the bottom in 2015. It was our, we swiped through it during the C19 crash, and then we did go much lower than it actually in the 2022 into, well, the 2022 bear market. But it was a place we stopped at for 3 monthly candles. And if you look, we were actually interacting with around that level of the 55 for like 80% of the time at the bottom. Yes, we had one really fucked up candle following it, but it was short lived. And hell, if I told you Bitcoin would go to 19K and then would go to 120K, it outperformed most altcoins. You would have bought it. So, this is kind of the thing that I'm thinking about. If we are to go into a deeper bear market in the immediate short term, I'm not convinced that we could go all the way down to 50K by March. By Q4 of next year, sure. I mean, but right now, we just did not have that euphoric end of the cycle that we typically have. And maybe that's me being naive, but I've been around here long enough to avoid getting caught up in a lot of this emotional shit. So, one development that I'm seeing on the weekly that I don't like is the 8 is going to cross below the 55 moving average. That's not a good sign. That's typically what we see at the end of cycles. And so that's called a wolf cross, by the way. And you see it right there. Interestingly enough, we were already bottomed as this was all occurring. And then as well, we did have the relief rally then. So the relief rally came into the 55 moving average on the weekly, which sits at around 102. So the idea is at least for the New World Order to push Bitcoin back up slightly above 100K. Like that is still seemingly in the cards. And the question is, in it doing that, will Bitcoin dominance start to collapse? Because if Bitcoin dominance starts to collapse and Bitcoin makes it up to 103, 105, maybe 109, but then stabilizes, you can see a crazy run in altcoins, probably more similar to the last run up that we had in altcoins. And I think, what was it, the Trump election timeframe right over here. It was just a couple of weeks, guys. In just a couple of weeks, altcoins did crazy things, 300, 400%. So just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Let's look at Ethereum. So Ethereum got below the 55 weekly. It also is treating it as, well, not necessarily resistance because it's too new. But on the monthly, we can see This is gnarly. Okay. Just look at where the Ethereum bear market ended in 2022 in June. By the way, ETH bottomed before Bitcoin did. So just look at that. That's nuts. We were treating the 55, except for this tariff crash, which was a black swan event effectively. We treated that as a support and we just back tested that same level. Now, is this me saying with certainty that we're going to bounce here and everything's going to be perfect? Not necessarily, but this is a pretty like oversold environment in my opinion. The last time we were in a similar, yeah, it's very similar to the April crash. Very, very similar. Even in the bottoming structure that we're seeing right now, we know algos are just running this whole thing. It was all algorithmic trading bots on the sell off, anyways. And remember, on October 10th, most of us were locked out of our accounts. Yet the charts, some altcoins lost 80% of their value in a single day. How is that possible? The liquidations would have came in much earlier than those scam wicks did. So this is a glitch, effectively. That's all it is. And you know what'd be interesting? It's funny how we can have glitch like that to the downside. I wonder if we'll get met with one of those glitches to the upside. Because I've been seeing for years people post this stuff about XRP, like, look, it had a glitch on this one exchange or whatever. You guys have probably heard these stories yourself. And it would be wild if we were to have one of those happen in the other direction, where instead of it just triggering like mass liquidations on a short, yeah, basically just massive shorts. Imagine if it was the opposite. That'd be nuts. And then we were still locked out of our accounts and only institutions were making moves. That's like how fucked up October 10th was when you look back and think about it. Why can't it happen in the other direction? And then the thing is where does it settle after it happens when we're allowed back in? Kind of like the Robin Hood situation that happened with GameStop. Some of you maybe remember. Anyways, so with ETH, we've been major pullback that we've had. How much is this percentage been? It's about 47%. Is that on the nose, 47? Or holy moly, exactly a 40%. Exactly a 47. And that, that doesn't shock me with Ethereum because I'm pretty sure ETH is 15 in Gematria and 47 is the 15th prime number. Okay, we had a perfect 47% correction for ETH. Shall we say any more or wrap this one up? Yeah, on the monthly below the 8, I'm not getting enough confident data with any moving averages to make me feel anything. I believe Bitcoin is probably going to cross bearish on okay, it's already crossed bearish on MACD. So the last time this happened was again early January, and in early January we had that bounce back up to the 8 moving average. So again, there is a lot of confluence with that for sure. The only thing that's different about this whole situation, the major thing that's different about this whole situation was there was no alt season. We barely got a new all-time high in ETH, and we barely got a new all-time high in Solana, barely got a new all-time high in XRP. That's very weird. That's very, very weird. Let's look at XRP on the monthly. We haven't broke structure yet, so keep that in mind for XRP. We're still kind of like holding on to that main like 2 to 215 zone. Bi-weekly is looking pretty much sideways. It's like once XRP got to $2, it's been really doing well holding that area. So one thing we are seeing is this wolf cross with the 8 going below the 55. And when that happened, again, we also saw a relief rally before continuation to the downside. It's not necessarily my base case right now because I think everyone is looking at the same moving averages. And I think ever since we had this event in April and also the recent event we've had, which has just been a clear coordinated attack against leverage traders and retail crypto investors, it's messed up a lot of these moving averages, in my opinion. It was all so sudden. And I believe, in my opinion, it's so sudden because they were trying to finish the ritual in the 47th week of the year. Exactly 47 days after Bitcoin hit an all-time high. And that's what they did. And so far, that's the truth. So As for XRP on the daily chart, I still have not a whole lot to report back because we don't really have much happening here. I got somebody kind of complained recently saying like, I wish you talked more about XRP. It's like, I don't know what to say, man. What is there to say? Like, I can't just make shit up. I need data. And if it's just trading at the same levels, red pill after red pill after red pill, then what am I going to do? Like, I need to tell you the truth and I need to share what the data tells me, and there's no new data here. We've been pretty much stuck in the same price for exactly a year now. And even Bitcoin recently returned back to its price a year ago, but in the process, it was continuing up and up and up and up and up and looking very strong. And that's even what I mentioned a little bit ago about XRP. To me, it looks strong. But getting into where we're at on the moving averages, I do want to mention that we've been just kind of trapped between the 21 and the 13 EMA. We also have, of course, the 8 now sloping to the upside, but the 55 is still sloping to the downside. So we want to watch out for that. Until we see the 8 cross back above the 55 and both of them sloping to the upside, this is going to feel like downside pressure. And that flip usually happens after these major liquidation events. So we had one going back into April, and it's almost the same setup where you have the 55 dropping, but then right here you have the 8 curving up. You could tell because it's the bright yellow moving average curving up right there. And then it gets to this point where in the midst of the relief rally, we do get a little bit of a shakeout. And this was something that I was showing you guys all for early December. So Bitcoin can move up into the next full moon, which I believe is like December 3rd, December 4th. Bitcoin could move up into the next full moon, and then after the full moon have a little bit of a sell-off, and that could lead into the FOMC meeting on December 10th. And then from there, we could have this kind of release, you know? So just consider that with the moving averages, that's like a very typical thing as well. We've been selling off now pretty much perpetually on XRP now for 4 months. And that was the same thing that we had over here. 2 months straight after a big upthrust. Got very oversold. And then this boring sideways phase took some time to break out of. And that does make sense leading into the months of late January into February. If we are to have an explosive move in alts, it would be likely to happen then. Very, very tough time right now to time things though. So we're going to move over to Credify. Whoa. Major move off this exaggerated sell-off. Got about 220% recently, just on that little swing. Zoom out. I've never looked at this altcoin before. When I look at the all-time chart, it's not the most delicious, but it does have a lot of data for us to consider. So it goes back to like right around when the last cycle ended, which isn't so great, but unlucky time to launch. I'm just going to draw a couple of horizontal lines for everyone. This is where I love to do my start any TA on any brand new projects that I've never looked at before. We're naturally going to create what's called a parallel channel. And we have some really solid data to work with just right here. So for one, this would be your selling climax. This, in my opinion, is your major automatic rally. And this V shape right here is your spring. And if you can get above this line, you will move into something called an SOS, which will lead us higher most likely than 6 cents. So from where this is right now to 6 cents would be an insane move. But remember how quickly it did it here. It went up 700% in less than 3 weeks. So these types of projects can make a lot of progress in a short amount of time. There's 3 months and it went up 1,600%. So this is one of those projects that if you can get in when it's in exaggerated oversold conditions, it's not a bad move because it can make these major moves up. As for a hodl position, like something that I would feel very confident holding long term, no, absolutely not. Again, this was its launch back in 2021. Bitcoin was like 60K or something back then. Now Bitcoin's 90K. So while this thing went on to lose 99% of its value, and it's still down 95%, not only from this level one time, but this level twice. As I just proved to you, like that's not something you want to hodl, right? So like when I say these things, just consider it's a trading opportunity, sure, but not the best coin to be sitting on, which ends up being pretty much most venture capital decisions. So I have a lot of venture capital plays that look just like this. Absolute shitcoin charts. They're horrible, but I know when they make a move, they do a lot. They're moving 1,000% plus. I've seen it before. We will see it again. So that's just something to keep in mind. From this pivot over here in October, all the way up to here in 178 days, this thing went up 2,900%. So 178 days. This is leading you into May. I'm not saying it's going to be an exact repeat, but it's not far off. Not far off from the typical time that we see some major bullish moves in crypto, which is typically March, April. So you could see right here, we have April. Here we have April. Very interesting how this year in April, March, we were in reverse. And I addressed this in my last update, how it was the opposite. It's making me wonder, are we now going to get another nice March, April again? Just like we did back in 2021, where the true alt season happened. So it's funny, like when we're having a really good alt move, it's always into March, April for some weird reason, ever since the last cycle. But this year, obviously, everything has been opposites. Not a bad chart though. Again, venture capital, 2% of your portfolio max. I'd avoid going any heavier than that. Okay, now we're looking at Monero. This is a chart that goes back a long time. It goes all the way back to 2014. So keep that in mind. And then look at how Monero, I'm going to go on the 3-day. Look at how Monero is back at the 888 fib. So anyone who followed my last Monero analysis, you saw that I had this major parallel channel, and then I double clicked it and I put it to be extended. And we've been following it since April 2024. Even during this April crash here that we had this year, we got bought right back up and ricocheted, like literally crazy recoil to go back to the same pretty much trading range we're in right now. So this is doing very well. But the one thing I will say is this was the all-time high in 2018. This was the all-time high in 2021. And we're at the same price here in 2025. Just consider this is kind of like what silver did, okay? Where it might be a similar breakout to silver. If you're looking at any charts that look like this triple top kind of vibe, what it tells you is, well, it would have been better to just be in Bitcoin the whole time. Because over here, Bitcoin was 19K, while Monero's the same price. So Bitcoin was 19K, then Bitcoin was... It's crazy to say, but like it's just important that we point it out, man. So 19K Bitcoin, 69K Bitcoin, 90K Bitcoin, but yet Monero is the same fucking price. So one is a hodl opportunity. The other one is like you need to learn how to de-risk. You need to just take profits if you want to play that game, you know? This would have been a tough hodl, watching it drop 94% and then drop again 80%, but like never really break out into price discovery like it did back in this cycle over here. So a lot of OG projects are catching up, which is really cool to see. We saw XRP catch up at the end of last year. Now we're seeing privacy tokens catch up at the end of this year. Interesting, right? Like in isolation, you have Bitcoin and price discovery. We had the last cycle, it was all like DeFi caught up to Bitcoin, did very well, but XRP didn't do well. Obviously, it had the SEC case situation, but why was HBAR suppressed? Why was XLM suppressed? You see? So it had nothing to do with the SEC case. they made it all about that, but in reality, like it's just money. Money's money. So this chart structure that we're seeing right here is like similar to the XRP chart now, where it's kind of battling with the prior 2 cycles ago all-time high. And that means when it coils up and it builds enough strength and it breaks out, it'll look like silver, which I believe silver has officially started like breaking out again recently. Let me just double check. So it's at 57. So you see what silver's doing now. By the way, this is like a 40 something year. I need to go on like a monthly chart to show you. So you see what I'm saying? We have 1980, we have 2011, and then we have right now. We're breaking. Ooh, there's a gap too. That's crazy. That's crazy. So, you see what I mean? Kind of like a triple top vibe. Monero, turn everything off. See what I mean? 1, 2, 3. Taking a long time too. This was 2017, man. It's going to be 2026 next year. So that's almost 10 fucking years. That's 9 years on the nose. You know, it's a long time. It's a long time. But if you're holding this now and you bought early and you're in a good position, then congrats, because it feels way better holding something like this than perhaps a lot of other things right now, because this particular basket of assets is doing really well. But to me, it's just catching up to what the XRP, XLM, HBAR, all of that did at the end of last year. Where, by the way, this was November 2024 for Monero. Look at what it was doing. Dog shit. It wasn't doing anything. But we can see the crazy breakout in XRP, XLM, and HBAR. I feel like there's something to what I'm saying right now, and it could be set aside for an isolated conversation around like, are we just all catching up and balancing right now? And then the next sector to move will be like the memes, you know, like things like Doge and Sheeb and Pepe and all that shit. It's interesting, interesting thought. All right, we're looking at LimeWire, which, by the way, shout out to anyone who remembers what LimeWire is. Is this still a technology? Like, do people still, is there a need for LimeWire? I remember back in the day using LimeWire. I probably shouldn't even say that because it's probably some, who knows, what legal thing. But yeah, it was just crazy that this is even an altcoin. Like, what the hell? And did it really launch in 2023? Like, what's going on? Does LimeWire have a CEO? Like, what the? Anyways, let's just do the TA and shut up. But it is funny. Let's do this really quick for you guys. This is all I'm going to entertain right now are these 3 lines, because to me this is really all that matters, and you're going to see why. So we have initial support, and now we've broke much deeper than this. So it's still in price discovery, but to the downside. Then you have this upside line, which is basically just telling me like, okay, we have around launch. Then we have this major quick move with an absolutely crazy rejection. I'm sure this was 70%. Close, 69. See, I'm pretty good at judging these things with a naked eye. But then when we had our blow off top in April 2024, what the fuck? Oh my God. So this thing had its like moves all the way. That's crazy. That's crazy, man. That's crazy. All right. So yeah, this has been like, this is in its obviously deep into a bear market, but just crazy how it's so isolated from everything else. This is really strange. So like this project's just continuing to take a shit. Over here, Monero didn't look so good, but then I just showed you the Monero chart and it's pretty much retesting all-time highs. What the hell? It's totally different than the last cycle where everything was kind of like working in harmony. This one, it's completely different. Really interesting. So anyways, here's your major supports. We have this 8 cent level, and then we have the 6 cent level, but that's obviously been taken out. So in my opinion, once we break above that, we have this level right here. Rejection, attempt of support, but a crazy bounce, gravitated back to it, rejection. This I'll turn to a different color because that level right there, if you can break that, it could absolutely swipe all the way back up to the 40 cent range again, which is like a 300% move. But from where we are today, that would be a 900% move. So keep in mind, this shitcoin might still continue selling off, no doubt about it, but there's some potential. Yeah, I mean that's a good move right there. You saw what I did. I just pulled the fib from like this major support level in reverse to this local high, which we've kind of gotten 3 rejections on, somewhere around 13 cents. And we've hit the 1618. So we've completed the move. Technically, I could see Bitcoin's selling off a little bit right now, past this into the monthly close. So when the market opens tomorrow, it'll be interesting to see, because pretty much right when the institutions woke up, right when CME turned on, we saw Bitcoin drop immediately. So they're definitely letting these algos run this right now. It's clear. But yeah, LimeWire, this is hilarious to look at this chart. But that reverse fib pull that I just showed you, that was pretty solid. It gives you a little bit of an idea about like where we're at on this regarding the local sell-off, and also getting through this 10-cent region right there with maybe a weekly close. And I think it could swipe all the way up to 44 cents again. And given the position we're in right now, which is not so great, we have about 1,000% move to the extremes. So you have one extreme, two extreme, three extreme marked liquidity up to 44 cents. That'd be a crazy trade possibility. And we know it happens, it could happen very rapidly with a project like this. Like just this move right here took about 30 days. Actually, that was about 3 weeks. That's nuts. So it can happen very, very quickly. So just keep that in mind. Posturing yourself in these sorts of plays with venture capital, like 1% of your portfolio, could be very powerful. All right, we're going to go to Gala. This is a position that I believe I hold a little bit of. It's not the most impressive position, but it's funny that it came back to the same level that it was in the backup phase in the last cycle. So we had like, let me see. This was launched after C19 already. Bitcoin had a major correction into the fall time, and altcoins looked like absolute shit all the way until the end of the year. And then look at what Gala did once it made it through the new year. It immediately went up 14,000% for 2 months, and then it had this major sell off again. An 80% sell off on the way up to another multi-1,000% move. So there was your 14,000% move, and then another 13,000% move. Since then, it's just been perpetually selling off. It's losing all of its value. I mean, I'm assuming there's no working technology that really matters anymore on this. That's a crazy breakout. This was a 350,000% move in 1 calendar year. So if you just bought New Year's on this project, you would have gotten at an insane price. And funny enough, we're going right back to some of these very oversold prices as we were in to the summertime of 2021. So I'm going to mark off this right here, pretty much where we're at. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mark off this right here, because clearly a very important level throughout our whole recent bear market. We have one touch, two touch, hold, and it bounced, came back to it, another major bounce, came back to it, and this was where it made the decision to drop a level lower. So to me, if I was to look at this on like a monthly, this would be a macro spring. Or sorry, macro spring. So effectively, you have your selling climax, automatic rally, and your spring, and then next would be a break of that level right there at 7 cents. So I'm going to mark that. Spring is like this. Test, SOS, LPS, or backup phase. That could be how this turns out. So we recover technically, have a little bit of stabilization, and then another rally up. Don't worry about the timing. that's not irrelevant. That's not important right here. I'm just telling you the structure of how these plays go. Because this has been in a distribution for a long time. It's been in a distribution literally since over here. It's almost 4 years ago. So now we're really getting in there where we're filling out all of this liquidity that we were once dealing with in another time of extremes before it popped up and it did a crazy move. So more locally, it would look something like this. Test. And it could even get rejected right there. Could be something like that. So yeah, Gala, this is one of those Hail Mary passes. It's not the most beautiful looking chart. There's definitely a lot of reasons to stay away. And if you're somebody who doesn't want to play the game of these speculative altcoins, then definitely stay away. I would not advise getting into projects that have charts that look like this. Just consider though that a little goes a long way in these plays, because from where we're trading at, like even at this local support here, up to even this level right there where we fell off the cliff, that's a 2000% move. So just consider that 2000% to go from the local support, which was from the end of 2022 all the way till recently, 3 years, and getting back to getting back to the next liquidity grab somewhere around 28 cents is a 2000% move from there. So if you were to buy into where we are today, that would be an almost 3000% move. So as I said, a little goes a long way. Let's look at the graph, and then we're going to wrap this one up. GRT. All right, so GRT has broken, it has broken deeper into a bear market. Let me see real quick. So our lows were back in November 2022, and here we are again at lows in November 2025. Fascinating. What's the date? That was after the FTX crash, by the way, just so you know. So this was clearly a support that was holding until pretty much right after Trump's inauguration. And then from there, we started to slide. And then there's clearly been a lot more sell pressure. So let me just check in on this reverse fib right here. And we're there. So you see what I'm doing? We had a test right there. Failed breakout lower high. We came back to the same level, which I drew the fib, and then this major rejection right there makes it easier for me to determine where I should keep that fib. And then I obviously just pull it up to the high in the structure, the local structure, and that shows me where the 1618 is, which, similar to the last example I showed you, it's dead on the money. So what I'm teaching you here using these fibs in a more like advanced way is incredibly helpful for you to determine downside targets, because you can do this at any time on any asset you want. So you see we have a high, we have a low pivot, a lower high, and effectively you could have drew your fib right here. So you could have already determined, okay, well, if we can't break structure to the top side, once we break structure to the lows, we will anticipate a move down to the 1618. You could do the same thing in reverse. So you're going to do it like this. And where that shows you the next major point to anticipate it coming to would be around the 382 fib. And funny enough, that'll be right on the outs. No, it'll be a little bit past that by then. I'm not sure if that's happening anytime soon, but if we have a major run in altcoins, it could be something that happens by March, April. So what was prior support becomes a resistance. Something like that. There's no reason for this project to ever recover and not continue going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. All these coins are speculative right now, and we're in the process of seeing everything get regulated. So a lot of hope that certain things will turn out the way they do, but it's kind of my way of saying, like, know which projects to get rid of. know which to hold, and most of them are to sell. Like most of them are not projects I'd be holding on to. So everything we talked about today regarding Credify, Monero, LimeWire, Gala, Graph, on any relief and any moves to the upside, I would be personally planning to de-risk any of those projects. So that's just my opinion. It's not in the same conversation as something like XRP. It's not in the same conversation as Bitcoin. I don't think it's in the same conversation as Solana or Binance token. These are very speculative that you'd want to play the game of swing trades on. So, of course, it's not financial advice. I'm not telling you what to do with your money. Realize there will probably be taxable events involved in doing this. But ultimately, all in all, I just wanted to let you know all of the charts that we just looked at, the past 5, those are ones that I would definitely be planning to move on from. So we can clearly see there's been some pressure after Bitcoin came up to this major level here on November 28th. Funny enough, that was right into the end of Mercury retrograde, and now we're into the shadow phase, and perfectly hitting on 93K. We have Saturn equals 93. Saturn retrograde was just ending on that day, and now we're getting a lot of... So effectively, once the daily close comes in, all of these algos start reacting to time. That's how it's all set up. So now they're liquidating and probably going to liquidate everything here. I wouldn't even be surprised if we hit this 87K, 86K tomorrow. That's their immediate reaction to the weekly close. And the timing that we've been doing these podcasts is very good for this current environment because it allows me to get that data and to share some thoughts. But anyways, I'm going to wrap this one up. An hour and a half packed with gems. I hope you guys appreciate this one. There's so many things we discussed, so I'm gonna leave this one here. Again, just a final reminder that I have this Black Friday sale for you guys over as Patreon supporters. It's a special link that you could find in the description or in the pinned comment below. It's a private link, so it takes you to a page with a very exclusive promo code that is not available to the public, as you can see here. So this one will get you an even bigger discount available. So definitely make sure to check this page out. And the package deals, you'll also see you have custom promo codes for, giving you up to 35% off. So appreciate and I'm grateful for all of your support. Really means the world to me. This gives you one last chance to get one of these courses before the sale ends tomorrow. And I'll be catching you all in a midweek update in a couple days, most likely. Appreciate every single one of you. Much love.